Hello there, Black Samurai, for out there. So good to have you here. I was going to wear white, I was going to wear red, and I decided on the black because I got the double wristbands. As you will see, Elvis in his 68 comeback special, which is very big now because there's a movie out called Reinventing Elvis. It's about the making of the 68 comeback special, which is what this book right here is about. And if you leave a comment in the comment section, I will put your name into a hat. And if you win, I'll let you know, and you can send me your address via Twitter. Just DM me on Twitter, and I'll send you that book. So this is kind of like as close to Elvis as I could get, but I was not going to wear a leather jacket tonight. I'll tell you that right now. It's not that hot, but it's hot enough. But I thought I'd start out the show before we get into the nitty gritty about some of the lies. In fact, some lies that have sprung up in the past few days. And I noticed, very interesting, that they're not necessarily coming from this country, though originally those lies were coming from this country. And I'll tell you where they came from and why they went out. And it's a little complicated, the lies of this country, but the lies that keep coming up all the time, and people are just going crazy about what people think he met Priscilla when she was 14. He met her when she was 14. He didn't have sex with her when she was 14. He met her in Germany with her family, and his mother just died. But stories, just lies, just keep going around and around. And I noticed some new lies coming up on YouTube. And when you listen, it's a computerized voice. And some people, I don't understand these channels. There's a lot of them out there. And I don't know who owns them or who's behind them, but it's some kind of big company of some kind that just spews out lies. And it's a computerized voice. It's not even a real person. And so I went to check, and I checked on Yandex. I didn't even check on Google. If this is what they're saying in here is true or not. So the set tonight is black, white, and red. And of course, there's a little blue going on because Elvis is very patriotic. But those are the colors of the comeback special, or black, white, and red. And this year is the anniversary of the Aloha from Hawaii special. And if you don't know why that is such an important event, it's not just a concert, and it wasn't just a cancer fund. But what it was a weekly cancer drive. And everybody who went there, you could pay nothing, and you could go to see Elvis if you could afford it. You could put in a penny. You could put in as much money as you wanted because it was a cancer drive. He made no money from it, and he didn't demand a certain amount of money for a ticket because he wanted everybody to be able to come and enjoy the show. That's just the way he was. And he raised an awful lot of money because people who could afford could. But it was the first worldwide broadcast in history. In 1962, there was a thing called Telstar, which broadcast a signal across the Atlantic, but it wasn't a live performance. And some places you'll read it's the first single performance of a single, no, it's the first broadcast period. No sound, nothing, pictures weren't broadcast around the world that way until that time, until 1973, until the Aloha from Hawaii performance. So that was a really, really big deal that most people don't know about. And this year's anniversary, I believe, happened in March of this year. I should know the exact date, shouldn't I? This 1973 is a big year for anniversaries. Secretariat won the Triple Crown in 50 years' time. Actually, in all history of the Triple Crown, no horse has ever broken his records. And he was a red horse, and he wore red horse with blue and white silks, and that's very American. And it was lifted us up during Watergate and the Vietnam War, which Elvis's the 68 comeback special, Reinventing Elvis, is about the 68 comeback special, the making of it. He's wearing that red scarf, and it represents the blood that's being shed. He wears it through the whole performance. In every outfit that he wears, and sometimes he'll wear a burgundy jacket, but he wears that through the whole performance because it represents the blood that's being shed in Vietnam. And it represents Bobby Kennedy getting shot in June of 1968. And before that, of course, was Martin Luther King. And 2 months after Martin Luther King was shot, his famous performance of If I Can Dream, which Elvis refused to perform ever again. He recorded it, but he would not perform it in concert because he didn't want to cheapen it. It was about the life of Martin Luther King. It includes some of the words of his speeches. And I'll read you a bit about what Steve Binder, the man who produced that particular concert, when Elvis recorded it for the album, how emotional he got. And Colonel Parker had refused, according to Steve Binder. I could play the whole video, but it's a pretty long video. Colonel Parker didn't want that because it's and nothing that was political did he want Elvis to do. And that's why Elvis was in all those crappy movies. He wouldn't let him do it. But after Elvis sang If I Can Dream, he said, that's it. I'm never going to sing a song I don't feel again. And then he recorded, I feel like a hunka burnin' love. I'm a hunka burnin' love. So I think he felt that too. So I don't think he swayed from anything right there. Just a hunka burnin' love. Unfortunately, his music, you wonder why didn't he sing some of the really, really great songs out there? That song was written specifically for Elvis to sing. He wasn't doing a cover of anybody else's music. And it became personal. And Elvis, you could see, was very real. But you can also see Elvis becoming very real in the movie King Creole, which was his favorite movie. And I remember my sister and I used to watch that. It used to be on Sunday afternoons, the free movie for Sunday afternoon. I'm not talking about an HBO, just on regular TV. It was the only one too. They didn't show any of the other Elvis movies. It was just King Creole, and we thought it was just so cool. And Elvis was so cool, and he was such a good singer. And then later, when my sister grew up, she didn't like Elvis anymore. Well, after somewhere in college, she started not liking Elvis. I guess it was something politically incorrect about it. The man is, as it turns out, according to his granddaughter, who has taken over the Presley estate, he's not just Cherokee, he's Creek too. And of course, he's also being the most famous Melungeon. Him and Abraham Lincoln, who he's also related to, are the two most famous Melungeons in America, which is a race that only occurs in America because it's 3 races, and it's considered Native American, white, and some African slave. And there's a reason why Elvis, I'll tell you a little story about Oprah and Elvis. And Elvis is a great grandmother of his on his father's side. And I recommend a great book for you to read. It's called By Sally Hodell. And she gets into Elvis's medical issues. She speaks to the doctors. She speaks to the obviously the family of the doctors that dealt with Elvis and dealt with his mother. And she went and spoke to all his family members that were alive and looked at the medical records and basically figured out what was wrong with Elvis. Elvis had actually he had nine in his nine diseases. We have 11 bodily systems, and he had diseases in 9 of them by the time he died. He was born with 5. And when it's a genetic disease, it can, you don't know you even have it. It kind of develops over time. So that's why the book is called Destined to Die Young. And his mother died of the same thing. She died, in fact, yesterday was the anniversary of her death, and she died at the age of 46, which isn't old. And they say, oh, she must be a drinker. They must be a drinker. You notice that Elvis, when he got big, he was bloating up. His body, and his mother's body was bloating. And his hips are slim. And then you see that it's coming out here. It's because the liver was going, and hepatitis. See, because people hear the word hepatitis, the first thing they think, oh, it must be, see, I've got my pinky ring. It's actually real gold. It's from India. My sister got her doctorate in India. And it's very, very, very thin. This is back when gold was actually cheap in India. Anyway, this in honor of Elvis, I got a pinky ring. It's the right hand. It's like it means you're not taken when you got it on your right hand pinky ring. Anyway, so going back. About Elvis. Notice how they bloated up in their 40s, and she noticed that most of his family died in their 40s, and that's. If you're an alcoholic, usually it takes many years for the liver to go because of alcoholism. But hepatitis is a stage of deterioration. It's not associated always with alcohol. It's any time by genetic disease, illness, malnutrition, anything, toxins, literally taking poisons into your system, which could be too many prescription drugs, that deteriorates your liver. So he bloated up, she bloated up. As it turns out, it's connected to a disease that starts in your lungs, that the liver is supposed to produce something that protects your lungs. Then you end up very hard for you to breathe. So tonight is the last night he lived. And what did he do tonight? He went out and played racquetball with Larry Geller, who is his barber. And he had a barber chair in his bathroom. And Elvis had a habit of every night, it's just saying, because Elvis was awake all night, he got used to that with his concert schedule. So he slept during the daytime so he could be awake at night and be really, really in top form at night. So what he would do is, and of course, Ginger Alden at the time, she didn't want to live there until they got married, specifically, but she was there. And he says, I'm going to go into the bathroom and read. First he went to the dentist. He had his teeth worked on, and he must have had something's going on, like a root canal, because he did get, what's that one? Hydrocodone. He got that for pain. And then they played racquetball really hard, which is a crazy thing to do late at night, but that's when he lived. So Ginger Alden and Larry Geller and his girlfriend played racquetball. He came back. Larry Geller was not just his barber, but it was almost, he helped him spiritually in that Elvis could not get to the bookstores because he wanted to go to the bookstores to read books about religion. And he read over 10,000 books on religion in his lifetime. And in his room was filled with books on religion. And he loved to read about everybody's religion, not just his own. We know that he was a Christian. He was a devout Christian. But he wanted to know how everybody came to God. And the beautiful thing about that is that that night, Larry brought him 10 books. And Elvis said, I want to read that book that you got. And there was one book specifically that he wanted to read. And he said, look, Elvis, it's late. I'll give you the books tomorrow. No, I want to read that book tonight. It was a book on scientific search for the face of God, is what it was called, according to Larry Geller. And it was a book about the Shroud of Turin. And so Larry said that was the book that he had in his hand. That's the book that when he said, I'm going to the bathroom and read, he would sit in the barber chair and read. That's what he did. I remember it was a time in my life that I stopped going to bed and didn't want to go to bed at night, and because I was afraid. But that's another story. And I ended up studying the world's religions too, in that same interest, not realizing that Elvis had the same interest. And I would go at night in the bathroom, and there's no barber chair, so of course you'd put the lid down on the toilet and you just sit there and you just read books. But anyway, he was found with that book. But speaking, we do have to mention Lisa Marie. Lisa Marie found a lot of comfort being at Graceland towards the end. She would spend hours, days in her father's room reading his books. And she was raised as a Scientologist because her mother went into Scientology. Elvis, they tried to get him because he was the most famous. Hello there, Elvis Nation. If you want to come on, got the link. There's Elvis Nation. Here we go. Add to stream. There's Elvis Nation. Is your mic on?
It is on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
Okay. So
thank you for the invitation. That was kind of unexpected and out of the blue.
Oh no! I want to have people. I don't want to just sit here. Usually, what I do is I sit here and I talk all about Elvis, and I'm the only one that seems to. Sometimes I'll have a friend on or somebody else on, but nobody knows anything about Elvis. I was supposed to start the show. Of course, with the Elvis class.
Oh, there you go. Now we're
got the wrist. I've got it.
The stage has been set now.
The stage is set. Yeah, we got the star right here. So Priscilla was a Scientologist, and it kind of Scientology with the whole thing Xenu, from the planet Xenu, or the alien thing. I mean, there's just no God there. And Elvis said they tried to get him because he was the biggest star, and he said, it sounds really good, but there's no God at the bottom of this. And it seems, I'm sure Priscilla, things sound good. Things like the religion you grew up in, either your parents don't follow it, or it isn't working for you for some reason. Sometimes you've got a rotten minister. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't have anything to do with Christianity. Circumstances are circumstances. And I'm sure she saw Elvis deteriorate, and she said, well, his religion didn't do anything for him. Who knows what she was thinking? I don't want to put words in her head, but she probably said, this sounds really good. Maybe psychologically, she probably needed some healing herself. Yeah. And maybe that's why she got into it. But it didn't work for Lisa. And I think Lisa might have, this is just my suspicion, might have thought to herself, I would have rather have grown up under my father, because when she started, and I saw her telling, I can't find the video, but I saw her telling the story about how I go into his room and I just read all his books and I feel close to him. And then she sang the duet with him, Where No One Stands Alone. And you can see that this is not the Lisa Marie that we remembered. The Lisa Marie.
Well, look at the dual culture that she grew up in. Okay, because Memphis was very traditional, and then Priscilla's side was all Los Angeles, out
Yeah.
there.
Okay,
And
that makes
so
sense.
I wonder if Lisa Marie might say, you know what, Los Angeles has a lot more. I'm not saying people in Memphis were perfect or anything, but I think sometimes people who are on that fast lane trek out there in California, they might want to seek something more that's rooted in something traditional or something. So I can't speculate what went on in her head, but I could see though how that could draw her, because LA always represents things that are fast paced, not permanent, flighty. And at least that's just the stereotype,
Yeah, yeah. It's so I think that when you see her, of course, you see her as a little girl. You see her, growing up, and then she's just beautiful. Time when she married Michael Jackson, she was just really at her peak of beauty at that time. And then you see when she's singing When No One Stands Alone, you could see this is a woman that's really been through life.
Yeah.
She's very skinny, color, like she's lost her color, yet at the same time she's finding her soul, like she's looking for her soul, and that's where she's singing from. It's a new voice that we see.
Well,
And
Elvis
so,
was a seeker, and that's probably where she gets that from.
yeah, and I think that the more as she got older, she realized that when she said herself that Scientology took her money, they took her life, they took her soul, they took everything. It just completely broke her. And a lot of people have said that it's definitely not for everyone. It's definitely for Tom Cruise. It's definitely for John Travolta. I mean, if it's working for Priscilla, then it's working for Priscilla, but it's not working for Lisa. And Lisa's soul was probably more an interest, more like her father's. There was just something more to it, because when you heard Elvis sing gospel, which is what he wanted to sing, what I'm saying is true. Yeah, because you know so much about Elvis. When he sang gospel, he could sing it forever. There was a different sound. He was happy. And then after every concert, everybody had to gather around the piano and sing for hours. And then Muhammad Ali and Sammy Davis Jr. wanted to go up and see him and talk to him. And they'd be there waiting and listening. But they'd have to listen to gospel music. Sammy Davis, converted to Judaism. And
I'm surprised Michael Jackson didn't try to get Lisa Marie to become a Jehovah's Witness back then.
Well, it didn't last long enough. She said that it was very, very destructive.
I don't think he was really active at that time in the religion anyway.
He was raised in it. I don't think he was really ever.
I don't think he was a practicing when he got older.
Shmuley, Botok Shmuley, Rabbi Shmuley Botok, he ended up hooking up with him at some point, but not all the way through. And then Madonna hooked up with the guys, the Kabbalah Center in. So it seems like everybody kind of in Hollywood, like they're seeking something, and it doesn't seem like it's sad to say that.
Well, think about this though. Let's say you go out to Hollywood and you attain some success. And what once was a fantasy to you, like being able to eat an expensive steak dinner or having a nice car, becomes commonplace. So you're not going to get that same high off of that anymore. And that's why a lot of them have that empty hole that they want to fill. And that's why they tap into whatever turns them on, I guess.
Right. As you know, Elvis grew up this was, you know, they went to revival meetings every night of the week. It wasn't just Sunday services. They belonged to every church they could belong to. and that was his soul. And they said that Elvis would show up, even if his parents didn't show up, he would show up at those revival meetings every night singing all night long. That was who he, and Sam Bell, I'm sure you heard what Sam Bell said. Yo, we didn't think that was singing. We didn't think that was, but they knew that was singing. we didn't think that was cool. It wasn't like kids, you know, that's not cool. And then Elvis is on the stage and they shoot that boy. He said, that boy's got the religion. Can you imagine? Elvis is up. Woo! Elvis died. Elvis just died. Oh, no. No, it's only 9:19. You don't die until tomorrow, Elvis. That's terrible. But that's a book, everybody. You're going to win. Oh, no. Oh, you know what? That pulled some of this stuff down. When it fell, it kind of, we don't want to. Elvis is just, I'm not going to start talking to the book. Oh, no. She's taking the same drugs Elvis did. Oh, my God. No. Here we go. We'll put that back up there. Elvis.
So let me ask you a couple questions about you. How long have you been a defender of Elvis?
A defender of Elvis? Sorry, I've got asthma too. Do you know that Elvis was also born with asthma?
Yep.
Elvis. Yeah, that's one of the diseases that he had in his 11 bodily systems. He had 9 diseases, or 9 in his. No, 9 out of the 11 all had diseases. Asthma was one of them. In fact, several of the illnesses that he actually has, when I read in that book, I have some of those things. I don't think I'm going to. I don't think I have the same one with the liver thing. Then again, you never know. I don't think. But my mother, I would have to say, it would have to be my mother, because I remember Hawaii was on TV and my mother changes the station. I don't know what else we were watching, but she goes, "That's him. That's the king of rock and roll. That's him. You have to learn about him. He's important." And of course, it was a beautiful show. I don't think I saw it with the whole thing. She turned to it and happened to still be going. And then we saw, my sister and I would see King Creole on Sundays. It was the Sunday afternoon matinee thing. And we just loved King Creole. We just thought that he was just the best. He was to us, he was like a great actor. My sister fell away from Elvis when she got older.
But you stuck with it.
I stuck with it. Yeah, because politically, if you become political, I think it kind of like then you start, Elvis all of a sudden becomes, you start to judge him, right? Once I got, the weird thing with me is that when I was very, very, very young, of course, my mother's birthday was January 8th, and he loved his mother, and my mother never let me forget that. And she wanted, she was dying of rare form of leukemia. And I remember we're going to have my sister put together like a Christmas, like the 68 Comeback Special was a Christmas concert, a party for her, because she wasn't going to live too much longer. And I said, I want to bring the Elvis music. She's going to really like it. My sister refused. She was not allowed to play it. And then she just gave in and she said, you can only play the Christmas music. You can't play anything else. You can't play gospel. And of course, most of the people there were from the church, and we had some solid Elvis fans there who are no longer with us, like the solid Elvis fans that, you know, I used to buy gifts for all the time about Elvis, you know, because I knew it made them, oh, this is going to make them so happy. You know, the elderly ladies, it's really fun to buy gifts for elderly ladies. It makes them happy. And then the music started to put, you know, the CD happened to be a mix and happened to have gospel on it. And the music, the gospel music started to play. And my sister starts screaming at me across the table. That she told me not to play it, to shut it off. And my mother starts to cry. She goes, he was so good. And then my sister goes, all right, you can let it play. It's like, oh my God, can't you hear your mother? It's like, can't you see that this woman who is dying and you having this party for, this is what she loves? And that's why I introduced these ladies from the church, didn't know that he sang Miracle of the Rosary, and I brought it over to them. I had a boombox, a traveling little, you know, moved it. And they had no idea. And they said, oh, make us a tape of that. We must have a copy of this. Oh, I'm making a tape of the whole Amazing Grace gospel album. And like I said, unfortunately, they're no longer alive anymore. But yeah, when I was young, it was really weird. I had a dream. Well, actually several dreams. That Elvis would just sit on my bed and talk to me about God. That's all he did. He just sat there and talked to me about God. And it was very interesting conversations. I mean, that's all I wanted to talk about. And then I started studying the world's religions. I was interested in contemplation and finding out how everybody came to God. And then I found out that that's what Elvis did. And you know, I'm not going to say that those dreams were real because, you know, I don't know. But I think it's very interesting. But anyway, my mother told me that she wanted Elvis music played at her funeral, which my sister absolutely flatly refused. And so I was crying.
Wait, why'd your sister refuse? It's your mom's wish, right?
She doesn't care. No, my sister, you don't know my sister. She's
no, your sister. I don't even know you really. I mean, I've passed you by like ships in the night, but
very different personality wise. So I told my father, and he said to me, play, you can have it at my funeral. And so I said, here, Dad, I gave him a couple of my Elvis CDs with Amazing Grace and the other one that had Mama Like the Roses on it, which is just a heartbreaker.
Oh, of course.
And you know, the CDs disappear. I don't know what happened to them, but he took them up there. I guess he must have listened to them. And then he was, when he was dying, 3 years ago in January, he didn't die of that disease. He died of, he went unconscious after a certain intervention. And he went unconscious, and we went there, and we were talking to him. I was talking to her about. I said, you know, stories about what happens when people die, and then the dog Chocho, who very interestingly loved Elvis. I shouldn't have called him Elvis, because when I would put the speakers on and I'd play either the Amazing Grace album or I would play, I noticed when the 68 Comeback Special and the One Night with You, VH1, and I'd put the two speakers, you know, one on either side of the room, and there was Elvis in the middle. And then Chocho, he was a little Shih Tzu, black and white Shih Tzu. He would walk around and he would sit right in front of the television, and he would watch Elvis. And then he would put his, you know, arms down like he was lying down, and he was still watching Elvis. Then he would fall asleep when he was listening to Elvis. And then when I would come home from work and I would listen to, put the music on, listen to Amazing Grace album, I would, no matter what had been going on in my life, I would just slowly sink into the chair, and then I would just peacefully fall asleep.
You mean the His Hand in Mine album?
It's called. It was a 2-disc set called Amazing Grace, and he's in white.
Okay.
And a white in the back, and then Elvis Chocho. I was going to tell Elvis Chocho did the same thing. In fact, today is Chocho's birthday. So the last night Elvis lived in the Candlelight Vigil is Chocho's birthday. The dog's birthday. Chocho would do the same thing. He would lie right in the center of the 2 speakers, and he would fall asleep listening to Elvis. And it's well, anyway, I told her that, Dad, when we got Chocho, he would run around. My father would get on the floor, Chocho would run around, and then he would lick the bald spot on the top of his head. And then my father looked at him, and I remember right when I first got him, if I wasn't there and I didn't hear it, I wouldn't have been there to tell my sister. And so that he looked at me and said, I hope dogs go to heaven, because heaven wouldn't be heaven without this dog. And I said that when people die, I've heard stories, usually when people are conscious, but my father wasn't conscious. The person or the elderly person who's ever dying, they'd say, oh, look, Toto or Jojo or is here. No, that dog died. No, he's here. I said, so Chocho's going to come. And Daddy's going to follow Chocho. I didn't cry either. I was able to tell her all these spiritual things. And my sister was listening to me. She was listening to me like she's never listened before, because she's got a PhD, a doctorate in ethnomusicology. And I'm just this spiritual artsy-fartsy person who don't listen to me for any reason. And, I'm on the wrong side of America, And she's listening to me as if what I was saying actually had validity. And I told, they're about 2 weeks. They're still on the earth plane for about 2 weeks, because after Uncle Angelo and Uncle Jimmy died, I talked to them and I said, could you this or that, just to let me know that you're around? And I won't go into what happened, but something like a pretty amazing happened. And she's listening to me. And then she goes up to my father, and of course he's unconscious. She said, you visit me, you come to me. I'm going, oh my God. This is the only time in my life had I ever seen my sister actually listen to me. And actually, not just listen to me, but she knew that what I was saying, there was a validity to what I was saying. So anyway, the day that my father died, I walked in there and I knew he was going to die. I just had a feeling. And I said, Natalie, Daddy's going to die on Ma's birthday. And she goes, oh. And I said, and it's Elvis's birthday too. So that's why that story is so apropos. So Elvis is...
Were you alive when Elvis was, or were you born yet when Elvis was still here?
I don't want to say.
Oh, come on. No one judges anybody. I was 5 when he passed away. And you could plead the 5th.
What?
You could plead the 5th on that one. You don't have to answer.
That's right. The king.
No, I didn't know. Trying to understand.
It can't be Elvis. Elvis Presley is dead. Run across the street.
Did you see the Elvis movie in the theater?
I didn't see the Elvis movie at all. I mean, bars. You know what? I haven't seen a movie for 8 years.
Not any movie whatsoever.
I've seen the last movie was like a remake of a Spider-Man movie. It wasn't that great. It was like an adventure movie. It wasn't that great. I went actually with my dentist, who's from Egypt.
Why would you go to the movies with a dentist? Like what? Isn't he breaking barriers?
Funny. They were just
professional barriers. You're not supposed to ever like socialize with a patient.
Dentists, I think, are different. There's doctors, chiropractors, like there's like different rules
But
for
dentist, it's no holds bars, right?
I told him that. I told him that, and he said, "Well,
Well, what do you do like after dinner? Because do you switch from how your teeth are doing
they were
to like personal
just
things? Or
funny. They were just funny. I celebrated the end of celebrated Ramadan. The end of Ramadan with them. Went to a Muslim restaurant and we ate outside. It was great.
This was after going to see. Now, was this the same night you went to see Spider-Man or whatever?
No. Maybe a week or so after that.
I was going to say because I don't usually associate. We'll celebrate Spider-Man with we'll take a patient of mine and we'll watch Spider-Man, and then we're going to celebrate Ramadan. Okay? So those were different evenings and stuff. Now, did you talk Elvis with the dentists?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't talk to Elvis with the dentist. My mother was dead. My mother had died years before. And there wasn't like, I don't remember the last person I talked about Elvis.
Well, you were on, that's how I knew who you were, though. You were on Steve's show a few weeks back.
Oh, I called in.
Yeah.
Because I'm just so sick of the lies. I'm just so sick of the lies. Today, I found a few. There's some channels that people don't realize that I don't know who owns them, but there's a computer. The voice is computerized, and if you listen long enough, you can tell that they mispronounce words or they don't say
because they just use text to speech. That's all it is.
Yeah, and I don't know who's doing this. And then it said something about Priscilla and Elvis didn't allow her and Elvis blah, 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 all this stuff. And I go, so I went on Yandex instead of Google. I should have gone on Google because I think the site was, and it said USA Today News, but it wasn't really USA Today. And there was more than one site. It was like a bogus site. And you can tell it was like totally broken English. It wasn't even that was mistranslated. So it was from some unknown source. So I'm thinking to myself, we know we can go back all the way to the beginning when these lies about Elvis being AR started. And it started out of Texas. Apparently was a racist. The guy who was on the company was a racist. You know how they didn't like Elvis in the South? They hated him because he was white teenagers and segregation.
And he emulated a lot of black culture through his expression musically.
But he lived in the middle of the black community. I mean, he was considered not white. If the segregated state puts you in the middle of the neighborhood that's all black, you are not white. And he actually wasn't white. And being Native American, and now I hear there's maybe some Creek in there as well. But he's also known as the country's two most famous Melungeons, who they say Abraham Lincoln and Elvis Presley. And Elvis's lineage is very interesting because when you go back on his mother's side, he's actually Jewish. On his great grandmother came from Lithuania. And Gladys was apparently, I looked up on the genealogist.
I read it before. Has that been disputed or has that been validated?
They said it was. I read a few sites said that. So I looked back as far as I could, and I got to the name Castleman in England. And I'm thinking to myself, well, could it be the name Castleman, which is not a Jewish name? But if you're in the South and you're moving in the South, and then you see some southerner that thinks that you You are not quite one. You're segregating people. You are not quite pure, because people didn't realize in this. My mother used to travel to the South often, and she went and to Harlem often, and she met all the famous blues
Harlem,
singers.
that's New York. That's not the South.
No, yeah, she went to Harlem, and then she went to the South, and
Oh, I thought she went to the South, especially Harlem or something. I'm like, what?
and
No,
Harlem.
okay.
She because she loved blues and jazz, and
Yeah, yeah.
she'd love to go to the churches on the weekends. So she would take the train down with a girlfriend, and then she would go, and then she would tell us about blow by blow descriptions how fantastic going to a Black gospel church, and they even have Catholic ones too. And she was Italian, you see, and so she was not allowed to stay in the white section because she was Southern Italian. People don't realize that Southern Italians were considered Black, and that people don't realize. Do you know the whole history of this? You see,
you mean from Southern Italy? You mean
Southern Italy?
Yeah, because it's right on top of like Africa and like
See,
Sicilian and
Northern Italians to this day, you will find it on the web to this day, and I've dated Northern Italians who have. They think that Southern Italians are stupid too. Anything south of Rome is Africa. And they'll even say that the Southern Italians, the reason why they're poor is they're lazy. Well, actually, a genocide happened. But, a genocide happened. The North took over the South and totally obliterated and killed more Southern Italians than all the Italians that died in all the wars that Italy had ever had. But it's a genocide. And so when they came to this country to kind of try to free that, they told the racists in the South that Southern Italians were half Black. And so the largest lynching, and sometimes you'll see on the web, one of the largest lynchings, but because people find it really hard to believe that the largest lynching occurred to Southern Italians, occurred in New Orleans, and they didn't apologize until 2019. That's the reason why we have Columbus Day, by the way. They gave us Columbus Day, but most people don't even, and of course they took it away, but most people don't even realize that Columbus was Portuguese. His father was Portuguese royalty. His mother was a Portuguese Jewish woman that was obviously was a mistress to the royalty. I don't know, in love, but he was not Italian at all whatsoever. But like they gave that to the Italians, and then you yank it away, and you gave him somebody who wasn't even Italian. They blame them for a killing of the chief of police was killed. So they basically just rounded up a bunch of Italians. And then the people, like it was vigilante mob, broke into the jails, pulled out the Italians, killed them, and then pulled their bodies apart and hung their pieces of their bodies around New Orleans. And then after a while, people took the body parts home as souvenirs.
Oh God, really? I thought we were going to talk about Elvis. You're disturbing me. What? This is like, oh man. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm very open to history and all that.
I'm telling you,
this was just a curveveball I wasn't expecting.
This is when you ask a question about the South, and you say, people do not realize the time. See, when people don't realize, that's why we're all messed up today. Because we think if somebody is white, they've been privileged their whole life. They don't realize that it wasn't literally it wasn't a melanin thing. The KKK, Jim Crow South, they would look up your heritage. And unless you were white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, you were not white. There were different levels of being white. That's why there's such a thing as, remember that senator that we had, Robert Byrd, and he said that word on TV, and he said, oh, there are white also. And he's trying to tell you, he's actually telling you which he thought that was a good thing to say. It would make him look less racist. But he was a grand exalted cyclops of the West Virginia KKK. And we have a statue up in the Capitol Rotunda.
Listen, I wasn't expecting like a barrel full of laughs, but this is like such a pick-me-up conversation.
I know, but when you ask the question, the idea, see, this is
right, but I'm trying to relate it to Elvis, though.
It's actually very related to Elvis. Is that people look at Elvis and they say, well, he's white and he stole black music. In the South, he was not considered white. Neither was my mother was considered white.
Was your mom raised in the South?
What?
Your mom was raised in the South?
No,
then?
She wasn't raised in the South.
But in the South, they wouldn't have considered her a white person.
No. And actually in the North, they treated them the same way. But Elvis was not just poor, and he was also mixed race, being part Native American, and really part Native American, not the Elizabeth Warren type. The idea is that he probably was Melungian. And you see, in the South, there were different levels of whiteness, or there was the pure white race. And the pure white race, the segregation was you couldn't belong to the KKK. You were not privileged unless you were of the pure white race. Even Catholics and Jews, and people don't realize that they classified people as not white, a lot of people as not white in the South. And Elvis, being exceptionally poor, of course, his father did go to prison. His father would have never been able to marry his mother if he wasn't also mixed, because whites could not marry, just like an Italian could not marry a white person either. Even if they were not considered pure white race, Italians were literally black. So his father would have to be considered, because the marriage would be illegal during that. People don't realize all these little bits and pieces. They don't realize what white and black actually meant, and segregation and racism, and that there was a huge amount of people who were discriminated against and not considered the pure white privileged people. So his father would have to be, but it was his father that was related to Abraham Lincoln's grandfather. That's how he's related to Abraham Lincoln. But the father would have to be considered mixed, because if he was white, even Elvis and his friends, they couldn't go to the movie theater. There was one white side and one black side, even though Elvis lived in the center of a black neighborhood, because he wasn't allowed to live in the white neighborhood. He was still segregated, because as far as people were concerned, they didn't really know. You go to a place and they just say, you've got light skin, you've got black skin, you're segregated. And then they would meet in the middle and sit in the aisle in the middle. And Elvis they wouldn't be separated, but they'd sneak up from the sides. They sneak up the stairwells, and they would meet in the center line and then sit right on the steps in the middle, because they refused to. And that's part of the reason why Elvis, the whole civil rights, there's a whole backstory on that. The reason why Elvis spurned on the civil rights movement more than we actually realize. It was an article that was written in 1996 I had read, and it explained that Elvis did some. I didn't know that he was, and at that time I just realized I didn't see the movie, but until the movie came out did the information come out that he was friends with Martin Luther King, and that he had given a great deal of money and support to the civil rights movement. And nobody thought that he did anything. But in this, it was very, very well put. He said that Elvis did something that Martin Luther King never could. He said that it's because in the segregated South, and this is what the people, I'm sure you've seen the original documentary was called Casey Kasem, Elvis, The Echo Will Never Die. And there's somebody took it and whittled it down to Elvis and the Black community.
Yeah.
The Echo Will Never Die.
Yeah.
It's a part of a bigger.
It's kind of a viral video now.
Yeah, it's part of a much bigger documentary. Most people have not seen the bigger documentary.
Did you see it all the way through?
I've seen the bigger. In fact, I saw the documentary on television many years ago, and then of course people don't realize that C. Herbert Brewster, Pastor W.C. Herbert Brewster, they say that Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and who was the other one? It's a couple over one that they would sneak into the into that church, and that's where they got their first taste of Black music, or they would say, spiritual music, non-white spiritual music. He grew up with this is, and then we find out, his history. He's been singing this music all along. He went to Black churches all along. His friends, did you read the book the two books by Peter Grelnick, which is,
yeah, I'm actually Last Train from Memphis. I'm actually working on that one right now. I didn't read the other one.
The Unmaking of Elvis Presley. Well, in it, he starts to talk about, and you start to get a picture about Elvis, where Elvis lived, and that there were other Black children around him in the Black neighborhood, and that Elvis, for the first time, was sitting outside his shack and had an ice cream cone, and that's like something that Elvis never had. And his friend came by. It was a little Black boy. It said in the book that he was an African-American boy. He came by and said, "Gee, I'd love to have an ice cream." This wasn't Sam Bell. This was another boy. Mm-hmm. Elvis lived between Tupelo and...
He knew other people besides Sam Bell.
14 different homes he lived in, because they were so poor. And the kid said to him, "Oh, gee, I'd love to have an ice cream cone." And Elvis said, "We'll share. You can share mine." And it's just like, okay, this is not a racist person. And then when you find out when he gets to Beale Street, of course, he didn't just learn. I mean, these guys, Jerry Lee Lewis and the rest, I forget the rest of them. Johnny Cash. And
Carl Perkins.
That's right. Yeah. They didn't just Elvis didn't just become what he became, was able to do what he did, because when he moved to Memphis, he went, as people will say, you'll hear this in other documentaries and other they white boys would go and rebel against their upbringing and go to East Trigg Baptist Church, and he would welcome in, because he would welcome in white and Black people, and that's where they learned it. And that's not true. This was just a part of Elvis's entire life, and you just don't pick up on who Elvis is and what he was able to do. You don't just pick up on that quickly.
Well, I mean, you can even use a closer example. I'm sorry, a truly racist person would not have worked with the Sweet Inspirations.
No, on any level. Yeah, there's even more than that. When he was the only white person who ever performed on Beale Street, which is in Memphis. That's the exclusively Black jazz and blues section. He's the only white person there. And also there is a men's used clothing store with used clothing that is exclusively used by Black men that Elvis would buy his clothes from. And they would say that Elvis dressed so, because he would dress very colorful. He's purples and pink, all these different colors. why would a racist wear used clothing from Black people? A racist would never do that.
But you gotta understand, though, we're now in a day and age, though, where in the old days, like in the 80s, 90s, even, you had to kind of supply a bit of evidence in order to call someone a racist. Now you almost have to prove you're not one.
Yeah,
So it's even that much harder, because we could lay out all these facts about Elvis, and if someone's mind is already dead set on him being a racist, it doesn't matter what counterpoints you may bring up. It's written in stone with some people.
yeah. Well, going back to the what Elvis did with the before I forget, it's important. What happened was, because of the segregation, and that the white, if you see that documentary, how much the white people hated him, and there would be good reason to spread a rumor about Elvis to the Black community that he was racist, because they hated him so much, and they hated the fact that he was
Well, he
bringing.
made something out of himself in a town where a lot of people didn't also. So there's anger, there's envy.
Well, envy, but he was, because as the quote in that documentary, he's bringing the white man and his children to the level of the.
Yeah.
That's what Elvis is doing.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to destroy his music.
Well, and they saw through their eyes that their values were deteriorating. Yeah.
For him. So if you are going to destroy Elvis, you spread the rumor. And they said it started by a racist. In fact, it's an Elvis historian, and I have a little clip of an Elvis historian talking about it. It's from it. He located it in Texas, and he was a owner of a media company that was a racist, and he spread this among his Black employees, and so it just spread. And also, Elvis, there's a story about Elvis being racist from Boston, and Elvis had never visited Boston. Like, he did something, or he said something about the only thing a Black person could do is shine my shit.
Yeah, or buy my records or something.
Elvis had never been to Boston, so just the lies were spreading. Yeah. So you knew that the
and this was before multimedia,
right? Yeah.
Think of how much they would spread.
This lie from back then, from people who had a visceral hatred and reason to destroy him, started these lies back then.
Yeah.
And they are continuing and festering today. That's when it was a few years ago. That group was making a disturbance outside of the Candlelight Vigil. And this was before all the thing went viral. The whole thing in the ghetto went viral all over the reaction videos. I wrote on Facebook, and I said, I forgot how I said it. Do you realize that Elvis was 50 years ahead of you when he sang in the ghetto in 1969? I mean, it's like this cause that you think you've just picked up, Elvis sang about. And this was before the reaction videos that went viral with the reaction. I don't think anybody saw my post. Maybe one or two people saw my post. But people, I'm sure other Elvis fans realized, hey, wait a second. And I thought to myself, Graceland is going to get destroyed. They are going to, and with the following year, they defiled the outside of Graceland. And I said,
was sad, yeah.
Yeah, and I said that if this country doesn't change for the better, people and these lies fester, they will destroy Elvis. But getting back,
I think they'll try, but don't forget, the truth always comes out in the end.
Not always. I don't.
Yes.
I find it very hard. Hello there, Celeste. How you doing? Hello there, Southern Musings. King Creole was great. That was a great movie. I don't mean to ignore the chat. I'm sorry about that. But knowing the way segregation was and how, and like I said, my mother experienced it herself when she went down there. She could not stay in a white hotel. She could not stay in a white hotel. Just she wants to go to a black gospel church. She, nope. She was segregated because she was considered black. So people don't realize what it was like, and that with movie theaters segregated, but also with Elvis and other singers, usually black teenagers went to see black artists, and then white teenagers went to see white artists.
But I think the movie set a lot of that record straight, though. The movie that you didn't see, the Elvis movie that you didn't see last year.
With Elvis,
you should find a dentist to take you to see it. It's really good.
The white teenagers and the black teenagers both loved Elvis's music.
Yeah.
And they all wanted to just go and enjoy the music, and they didn't care about black and white. And it was because you had the separation where they would segregate the black teenagers and the white, and what happened was it started brewing. Teenagers just said, look, we just want to go enjoy the music. We are sick of this segregation. So this anger and irritating, there's a certain word that I'm looking for, started to brew. It started to simmer.
Contention, Elvis,
because Elvis brought people together.
Yes.
Elvis brought black and white people together because it wasn't him singing black music and only white teenagers saying, gee, we want to hear black music, but since we can only watch both all black and white teenagers, people of all colors and races, wanted to come in here and just enjoy it. And so year after the kids of the South had enough of it. And so by the time the 60s arrived, they had gotten, some had gotten older, some were still teenagers, but they got to a point where they mobilized in the civil rights movement. But Elvis also moved to Memphis and got to know Martin Luther King Jr. So it began, people don't realize it began with Elvis, and it took a person who is actually mixed race himself. But people still and somebody who actually grew up in black
Elvis was a contributing factor, but I don't think it started. I don't think he was the spark that lit the civil rights movement.
Well, like I said, it was something, the way the article was written.
He helped accelerate some things, and it is very.
People wanted, isn't it? People didn't want it, but he did something that Martin Luther King couldn't do. He got the black and the white kids together, and he got them they upset because they said, look, we just want to enjoy the music. We don't want to be segregated. And he lit that spark over the years. The flames started to grow. And that's something you need. You need more than just some voices saying this has to stop, because a lot of wealthy voices can say it, or a lot of powerful voices can say it. You have to mobilize, and just like with a lot of riots we've seen, you mobilize the youth. He mobilized the youth. It begins with the youth, because the youth will go. Adults don't necessarily take the kinds of chances that a youth and go to the extremes that a youth would go to. But at the same time, it was many years festering, and he was the one that had the audience that they said, we're tired of the segregation. We're tired of being separated. And that's what began. Remember, he came out, That's All Right, Mama was 1954. He was even before James Brown. People don't realize that even Chuck Berry, and the interesting part with Chuck Berry, Johnny B. Good was 1956. A friend of his, when Chuck Berry moved, he moved to where they sang rockabilly and country music. He moved, it was another poor place, but it was the white section. And he moved to the white section, and his friend said, Chuck's music is going to change now. And if you see, if you listen to Johnny B. Good and Maybelline, they are very distinctively influenced by country music. And of course, there was such a thing called rockabilly. Rockabilly was a white kind of, like a country kind of rock and roll kind of. And so the fusion of rhythm and blues, and technically rock and roll was a fusion of rhythm and blues and rockabilly. Except Elvis said in an interview that it's mostly gospel and rhythm and blues, but technically it is rockabilly. And because when you think of a lot of the early, it's a mixture of rockabilly and rhythm and blues. When you think of the very early rock and roll, they said that Rocket 88 by Turner. What's his first name? Ike Turner.
Ike Turner.
That was actually the first rock song. It's very rhythm and blues. Very rhythm and blues. And did you know that Blueberry Hill was not written by Nat King? No, not King Cole.
Nat King Cole. You mean Fats Domino?
What's his name? What's his way sick is it?
What, Fats Domino?
Fats Domino. It was not written by Fats Domino. Do you know who it was written by?
It was written by Nat King Cole. No.
No, it was not written by Nat King Cole. It was written by Eastern Bloc, Jewish men from Eastern Bloc countries. I don't remember their names. Just like Lieber and Stoller wrote Hound Dog and wrote a lot of Elvis's music.
Ben Weissman was a big Elvis writer. Yeah.
And Little Girl Blue was written by one of the, also originally from Eastern Bloc, Jewish, the guys they came to this country. Not Rogers, something in Hart.
Rogers and Hammerstein.
Not
Rogers and Hart.
It was. I think it was Rogers and Hart. And they would write musicals for Broadway.
Yeah.
And Little Girl Blue just sounded completely different than what we hear Janis Joplin's version. Who we think when we listen to Janis Joplin's version that she's singing an actual blues song that she's actually has taken from probably an old blues singer, African-American blues singer. And in truth, when you go back and you hear to the original Little Girl Blue, it's like, I don't want to hear this. This just doesn't sound right. But it was a completely different song. And then even Nina Simone, who's African-American herself, sang it. And it still doesn't sound like bluesy at all until you hear Janis Joplin's version. And I go, whoa, she transformed that song from a song that wasn't even blues into a blues song. So people have no idea. I think it's just very surprising that people don't realize the people behind this music. Not everything is still like Big Mama Willa Mae Thornton. She sang Hound Dog, but Lieber and Stoller wrote Hound Dog.
Right.
Big Mama Willa Mae Thornton wrote Ball and Chain, which is Janis Joplin sang Ball and Chain. I love Big Mama Willa Mae Thornton's. Back then, Janis Joplin used to call. Back then, she was called Big Mama Willa Mae Thornton, and now it's Mama or Big Mama Thornton or Willa Thornton. But anyway, it's it's because I used to read. My mother used to love blues and jazz, and she's got an autograph book. She went and got autographs from all the old blues jazz singers, all African American, and in fact, probably the only person who has that. I mean, from people all the way back because she really, really, really loved him. And then I went into, when I was young, studying that myself. I mean,
Well,
actually,
what was the kind of music that you were first into before, like when you were coming up? What was the kind of music you gravitated toward?
oh, the Monkees and Partridge Family. I love the Monkees.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean? It's like you look at Davy Jones. Well, he's almost my height. You know, he's all cute and he's got that English voice. And the girl, when love comes knocking at your door, and you know, the Partridge Family.
Well, you know, you mentioned, like, it's funny because a lot of people, they know the big hits of the Monkees, but like I like a lot of their songs that weren't quite hits. You know, like Saturday's Child. I like stuff like that. And
I'm Saturday's Child, by the way. I was
are you really?
I'm really Saturday's Child.
So were you around when the Monkees were? See, I'm trying to trap you again.
You're not gonna do it. You're not
gonna fall for that one.
I could be anything. I well, you know what? I have.
Well, see, I don't know, like if you're like around.
I have very old parents, and I have my mother was a change of life baby. I was a change of life baby. Italians, they're product. They can just procreate till they're 100.
So are you full time? Because I would have assumed you were like Irish or something.
No. I'm half Italian.
Okay.
Yeah, and my father is mixed race himself. So you know, part Egyptian, but really, you know, the French got rid of slavery. They dumped them off in New Orleans, in Haiti, and in Canada, and so he kind of came through there.
Oh,
so I'm
okay.
kind of like, so in a way, it's like, I know my mother would look at me and she'd say she didn't really realize my father's heritage. She just thought she was the only one.
You're going to be segregated no matter where you go. Yeah.
And she was, you know, dark-skinned Italian. And she looked at me and she said, "Why are you so white? It must be your father's fault."
My God, I would have never guessed, because I'm like Irish and English and a little bit of German, and you're 20 times whiter than I am.
And she's like, and it was just a little kid. I'm going, oh. And there was all this wokeism, and she wasn't even a hippie. She just like couldn't understand, you know. I mean, she just couldn't understand where I came from. It just means something. Your father, somewhere in your father, which is pretty funny.
So it was just you and your sister then, with the one with the doctorate, just the two of you, or did you have other brothers and sisters?
No, that was just the two.
Now, does your sister like Elvis at all now? Has she made her peace with it, or?
Not at all. She decided the Monkees were bad. Said Elvis is bad. She's got her doctorate.
Well, so getting a doctorate has made her realize she can't listen to the Monkees anymore?
She is on the political spectrum. She's got her doctorate in Indian ethnomusicology. And she married a Brahmin, and she was upset when her son wasn't getting white enough. And so, I mean, just to put it very,
her husband was a what?
Brahmin from India.
Okay, Brahmin. Okay, all right. And so, what led to your sister denouncing the Monkees?
Well, she at some point she said they couldn't really sing, and then Elvis, she when in her first. When she got 2 degrees in 4 years, when she went to college at 17, 2 degrees in 4 years, and she actually had 3 jobs. One was a full-time job. I didn't know how the hell she did it, but she was listening to Elvis's original Sun Studio recordings, and I remember she had that in the car, and she had a box of After Eights, and I said, "That's very clever." She took the top off. Every single, you know how they come in individual wrappers. She'd sliced off the top of each wrapper, so as she drove, she could just so that's very clever. And I remember next to it, she had her, you know, was cassettes or something. I don't know if cassettes or CDs, I forget. But it was Sun Studio recordings. At that point, she was appreciating Elvis. When we were younger, we like I said, we listened to, we watched King Creole.
Well, what led to the the formal denouncing of Elvis.
It's kind of like it probably got politically incorrect to like Elvis. It probably, by being extremely on one side of the political spectrum, there's certain rules and regulations.
I've never heard of that. Bill Clinton, I don't even think ever said I denounce. I walk away from Elvis. He liked Elvis.
Well, not Bill Clinton. It's like Bill Clinton's kind of like cool. It's like different. He's not like, now you've got like people, even Hollywood, Austin Butler. How did George of the Jungle win over Austin Butler? Even I know Hollywood denounced George of the Jungle. I forget. I don't remember the guy's name.
Brendan Fraser.
What?
Brendan Fraser.
Okay, I didn't. So
but he's going to legally change his name to George of the Jungle, so I could see how that.
George of the Jungle is the only thing I can remember. I didn't even see the movie.
My dentist saw it. He invited me to go with him. So it just felt too odd going with my dentist to see George of the Jungle. I said no.
But it's like I read several years ago that Hollywood had basically ostracized Brendan Fraser. He would never work again. So when Austin Butler didn't get it, that was a big insult. To give it to Brendan Fraser, somebody who they've ostracized, rather than because it's politically incorrect. Because Hollywood, of course, has always been the height of morality. And they've always been
allegedly or ostensibly
correct. The whole thing, the way Marlon Brando and he was going to do a protest about how Hollywood treated the Indians, Native. Then it was Indians. Now it's Native Americans, Indigenous Americans.
Yeah, and what's her face? He sent her to accept the award for him.
And except she wasn't Native American.
No, she wasn't.
She was an actress. Good for her. It's almost like
a sheen little feather.
The biggest. Like, screw you.
I think she might have been Italian. I don't know. Like,
yeah. She was like, I think she was half Irish. But so was that Wonder Woman, Linda Carter's half Irish, and her mother was Mexican.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow. And so I told that to my hairdresser. I haven't had my hair cut. He retired in 2012. And he said,
you haven't had a hairstyle done since 2012?
I haven't had my hair cut since 2012. And
seriously?
He goes, seriously. He goes, that's why she had such a great butt. First thing, she was beautiful. I mean, that's the real Wonder Woman. The cleavage.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this talk about Elvis, we're now covering Linda Carter's shapely posterior.
We're talking about mixed people who are mixed race, who are beautiful. Blue eyes, dark. Elvis, blue eyes. She was voted once the most beautiful, had the most perfect features of any woman in the world.
Linda Carter was tall too, right? Or
was she? Yeah,
like very statuesque. Yeah, but Elvis, he
was 6'2".
Elvis was 6. Yeah,
he was 6'2". Yeah.
Okay. Did you see that picture from the new Priscilla movie? It looks like Elvis is way taller than the actress playing Priscilla. So they didn't really there's a little bit of height disparity from the real Elvis and real Priscilla. Though
Priscilla does at time look tinier in photographs, but I think she's not. I don't really know how tall she is. How tall is she?
I don't know. It's been a while since we've hung out, so I haven't really measured her lately.
I've never known. I've never known how tall she was.
Now, where are you? You're in the United States, I take it.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to figure because I don't hear an accent. I'm from the Detroit area.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm from the north too.
The north? Where?
North. I'm from the north too.
Why are you saying it like an antebellum? Like you're from the north.
My alter personality is Blanche Dubois.
Stella. Yeah, I'm from the Detroit area. And And so it's really cool because you get to talk to people from around the world when it comes to Elvis.
Yeah, it's like, so tonight I wanted, there was a bunch of stuff. I actually had a bunch of clips I wanted to show, and a bunch I talk about that that nun. Now I forget her name. That nun who knew Elvis, because it just
You mean his co-star that became a nun from King Creole and
in Creole and
Loving
Flaming
You?
Star.
Oh, she was in Loving You.
Loving You, Flaming Star. Gee, wasn't there a movie called Flaming Star?
Yeah, but I don't think she wasn't in it, though.
I just realized, I go, that's an unusual name. Then today, it'd be a different kind of movie today. That's right, Loving You, which is
you still got to see the Elvis movie. Yeah, I mean that's almost illegal not to see it. If there's a dentist out there watching, take her, please get her to see it. Especially if you're an Egyptian dentist, whatever. I don't know what that has to do with it, but somewhere we don't have to sit in the middle aisle or something.
Oh God, there's like reasons. Okay, of course, one of the reasons why they say that Hollywood doesn't like Baz Luhrmann because he told people to wear sunscreen, and because he's telling people to remain. No, sunscreen like stops you from getting cancer. Even Bob Marley died of skin cancer. He got it on the bottom of his foot. Skin cancer can appear on any part of the body, and it can. People who are African American can get it too. Highly melanated.
His father was white, not to seg into another interracial kind of diatribe, but Bob Marley's father was white, and that's where the gene carried that. That's how he got that.
Okay, what?
Bob Marley's father was white, and that certain disease that he had is predominantly found within the white community. So that's why he got it.
Bottom of the foot cancer?
It was a certain strain of cancer. I remember reading that. The genetic aspect of it came from his father's side.
But he didn't, like, son never, but I was listening to an African-American doctor, and she said that it's true. She said that it's a fallacy that Black people get skin cancer all the time, and to think that they don't because of the melanin has to do with, why we even produce melanin. And some of us have it and some of us don't, has to do with our ancestors' proximity to the sun.
Well, you don't really hear about like white people getting sickle cell anemia. Like there are certain diseases that affect certain groups.
That's absolutely true.
Like Crohn's disease affects a lot of Ashkenazi Jewish people. I don't know why.
Right, because it's if the particular ethnicity or race or what a group of people intermarries. There's like Ashkenazis have a lot of different diseases that are prevalent because there's a lot of intermarrying. Of course, it's a small population, and you could see throughout time why certain populations and Jews would want to stay close in communities because of what they have been through, and they've been thrown out of so many countries. In England, it was Edward I did an early Hitler on the Jews, and if you realize that
there were a lot of pogroms out there.
It was just awful. What happened to them, because they ran out of money. He was borrowing money from them for his war campaigns. It's kind of like what happened to the Templars. And then they ran out of money. And so he began persecuting and killing them, rounded up, executed them, and banned them from the country. And they had to wear the yellow Star of David, like Hitler did. So he did that first. So you could see where if you have communities that have to stay together who are ostracized, or like in this country when slavery ended, and then the reason why a lot of African African Americans ended up in ghettos was because there was a red zone. There were certain zones that they could live in. And so then if you have a community that is very closely knit and is more likely to, because they don't have the means of traveling far to find a mate, you basically inbreed, and a lot of times two people will be carrying the same gene. Like there's a couple next door. The father, I think, is half Italian. The mother is Italian. Both of them carry the same gene, and they had 3 children that ended up were severely handicapped and mentally handicapped, that she had to lose all 3 pregnancies because both of them were carrying that same gene. I don't remember the same gene, but it happens with Italians too. So, and they're Southern Italian, and that's a very small Southern. The boot of it, the shoe of it, it's very small. So if you have communities, and then you've got the rest of the country saying anything south of Rome is Africa, then you've got nobody, and then you can't, especially if you can't speak to the languages different. In Italy, that's the way it was. The languages were also different. The dialects, I should say, the dialects were different. Then you have to, because you're ostracized. You're on this class level. You live on this side of the, you're not allowed to live over here. You're all these things make, and that's the reason, one of the reasons why Sally Hodel had discovered in her book, if you hadn't read it, why he had so many diseases. And she said that somewhere along the line, Elvis's parents, that family must have intermarried. His mother's parents were first cousins. And that's the reason why. So you've got the same thing happened in the South like that, because you've got people who are ostracized, and they are that's a segregation. You cannot marry. You're not allowed to marry whites, but you can only marry within these people, because you're not allowed to marry. You're not allowed to live here. And you're not allowed to marry outside of your class.
Well, is that the reason why? I mean, Elvis used to joke about, I'm just trying to cover all bases, but on his mother's headstone, there's the Star of David and a cross.
Yeah, well, she said that she told him that her great grandmother was Jewish, and the genealogist said that it came from Lithuania. Technically, so the Jews do accept him as being Jewish. But technically, his grandmother on his mother's side was a Cherokee, mourning white dove, or mourning dove white. And that's another interesting thing we'll talk to. Remind me of the word white and the word and how we got on colors, giving certain groups certain colors, and what it actually started out as, because there was a time people didn't say they were this color or they were that color. You just came from this particular country, or you were this religion, whatever. But we didn't separate amongst colors. But she is his great grandmother on his mother's side, not this. She married Mansell. Her husband's name was Mansell.
Yeah.
And it was his great grandmother. But if you go by in Jewish tradition, it used to be the father.
Now it's the maternal.
Now it's the mother, because they realized, sometimes you don't know who the father. So if you know that the mother is Jewish, so it actually did change in the 1st century. People don't know that.
But do you think a lot of this, though, probably contributed to Elvis really being curious about life and stuff? Because, like you said, it's not just this straight through story of he's just a Southern white boy. There was so much more complexity to that.
Yeah, and he's much less white than, apparently there was a rabbi who lived above him in Heights. What's the place in Memphis that he lived? It was like in a sense it was a ghetto. It was government housing, and above him was a rabbi and his family, and he used to learn from the rabbi, but they would invite the family over for Shabbos every Friday night, and which my mother was also went to Shabbos every night. Neighborhood Jewish family, and because he never told them that he was Jewish, or the mother, even Gladys kept that from her husband. Because she was afraid of discrimination, so she never told Vernon. And when after Elvis died, he's the one who changed the headstones. He didn't put the Star of David on her. And then I kept asking for it, and that's when they retrieved the headstone. But apparently, if you're not Jewish, you have to the not Jewish person at Shabbos has to turn the lights on and off. And Elvis turned the lights on and off. Apparently, he never told them that he had Jewish ancestry. But it seems like it's extremely far back, and it's, his grandfather.
Is it kind of silly though, in a way, because think of how many Jewish people in history had to convert to Christianity to avoid persecution. I don't think there's a person walking this earth today that doesn't have Jewish blood in their ancestry.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why this whole thing is absolutely ridiculous.
I probably do just 4 generations back and don't even know it. We don't know.
And most people, because people had to hide it, but the rules on apparently your soul is Jewish. The mother gets the Jewish soul. I know this because I learned from Hasidic rabbis. I used to go to classes, Hasidic rabbis, and one of them used to call me every night. I used to learn over the phone before the internet, over the phone every single night.
Rabbi take you to see Spider-Man too, or
no. He lives in Crown Heights. There's a rabbi from Crown Heights. No, both of them were from Crown Heights. The other one that I went to his house, his family.
Oh, you learned about like Torah and stuff like that, or?
I study all religions. So this room, I have a dog. So this room is the one that's got all the different religions, except my library on Islam is in the other room where the dog doesn't go into, because dogs are forbidden. Because Muhammad.
Why? Because the dog would convert, or wait?
No, because Muhammad was waiting for an appearance from Gabriel, and he didn't realize that there was a puppy hiding under the bed. And when Gabriel didn't come, he blamed the puppy and had the puppy taken out and slaughtered.
Oh, man, that's barbaric.
Yeah, and there's a story of him where a cat fell asleep on his shirt, and he cut the arm off of his shirt rather than disturb the cat.
Okay.
So like I know, except my friends, my dentist friends, they liked dogs. In Turkey, they love golden retrievers. They buy them as puppies, and then when they get adult dogs, they just let them go on the street. Everything is kind of, because I think Egypt is developed a little bit differently than other countries. Every country still kind of keeps their code, but I'm the story I told you, that's actually out of the Hadith, which is the sayings and doings of the Prophet, the life of the Prophet. So it's like I've got so many books on religion. Anyway,
so that makes sense of your attraction to Elvis, is that you're both curious people in that area.
Yeah, and I didn't realize I was mixed either. I didn't realize that. I was like, and then you realize, I go, okay, and it's like that's interesting. You never think to look at me, but you never know. You just never know with people. You never know with people. That's why you gotta make sure you know their ancestry before you're friends with them. But anyway, getting back to Morning White Joke, it's a very important point about this whole color thing. The reason, the old way on how to surrender during the war when you're surrendering or you're coming in peace, you carry a white flag, right?
Right. The white
I
flag
mean,
is surrender. Yes.
is peace.
Yeah.
The white fakes me. So a Native American, she had white attached to her name because she was friendly to white people. She wasn't just on one side. And the where the name Red came from, and I learned this from a Cherokee genealogist. So this is a Cherokee through and through. I'm not getting this from some kind of crazy idea. She said that the Native Americans who are called red, the reason why they have been red, were considered red, is nothing. This has nothing to do with skin color. It has to do with the redcoats. The English convinced the Native Americans, if you fight for us, we'll give you your land back. Of course, that wasn't going to happen. They colonized America. That wasn't going to happen. There was a lie. So the Native Americans were known as red. The ones that were against the colonists were not friendly to the colonists who were fighting the English, the redcoats. They were known as that's the red
Right.
associated with the English. So that's how the name was attributed to the color. The idea that where we got this whole idea of every race has got a color, and white people are even white, because like you said, like if you look at Tom Jones, he's from some Wales. He looks he could be Middle Eastern. You know, I mean,
Catherine Zeta-Jones too. She's
Catherine
Welsh.
Zeta-Jones. That's right. Gorgeous.
And you could
gorgeous.
convince someone that she's from the Middle East.
Yeah, she played in was it Zorro, that Zorro
Yeah.
movie with Banderas. I was like, you would never think she was Welsh. And there's a lot of people in Germany with their skin is not light, is kind of dark. And I don't know, and like you kind of wonder, like, you know, why this whole idea of skin color. And originally Cheddar Man in Cheddar, England, they say now we only developed melanin because our bodies needed to produce vitamin D, and you need only a certain amount of vitamin D in a certain amount of UV rays into your skin to produce vitamin D. If you get too much, you don't produce it. If you get too little, you don't produce it. So the reason why the people who live near the equator are very dark is because they're too close to the sun. They get too much UV. Their bodies don't produce vitamin D, and then you get birth defects, and then you get other diseases, because you know vitamin D is essential for preventing birth defects and keeping you from getting diseases, boosting your immune system. It's absolutely so. When people moved up north, and I don't know why. If I had my way, I would always live in the Mediterranean. That's a perfect, or the tropics. I
lived in the tropics. I'm a northerner.
Yes, you had to lose your melanin content. So see, everybody's the same. Everybody's human, and the melanin content. So if you're evil because of your melanin content, the people up north used to have, or have the ability of higher melanin content, is that they had to lose it because they moved up north. And the more north they kept moving, the body produced less and less melanin, because it had to take in as much UV light as possible to produce vitamin D. So this whole thing about color is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And the whole thing about Elvis, Elvis is this white boy, and he's much more complex than a white boy. I mean, if you live and you grow up in a black neighborhood, and then he would go down from the hill into Shake Rag, where the the African-American families on the hill said, don't go down Shake Rag because the prostitutes and the drugs and all the stuff was going on in Shake Rag. But he would go down there and listen to Muddy Waters. Muddy Waters was playing there. And so Sam would say, we didn't know where he was all day. And there he comes up. He's coming up from Shake Rag. This is who he was. In fact, Sam sounds like he wasn't interested in the things that we identify as Black culture. Elvis was, but he didn't just say, I like it and I'm going to go there. He lived it. This is where he lived. This is where he grew up. And Elvis was, another thing about Elvis people don't realize is that he could sing any type of music. Elvis, it wasn't say, okay, I don't have to sing blues or rock and roll or this or that. Elvis could sing anything really, really well. And he's much more complex a person than I think people realize.
Very much so. Well, listen, on that note, I really am enjoying this, but I also have to take my dogs out. I have to get up early in the morning. So I want to thank you for having me on here. I thought I was going to pop on for about 10 minutes, but look how far we got carried out to sea. And it was all very fun. You're a very interesting conversationalist. And you're always welcome to pop on my show or on my channel if you ever want to.
Yeah, I mean, you asked me like what got me into Elvis, and I wanted to ask you the same question. I'm always interested in like somebody who starts a channel and puts so much dedication into like you do. I mean, and your channel is, I think your channel is exceptional because the sound, first of all, let's say something about that. Isn't just like you click on a video and then you're like, I love this song, except I could barely hear it. Or the sound is just not that great. I can hear it, but the sound's not that great. Not only do you have a selection of Elvis music that most people have not heard most of Elvis's catalog. He's sung so much music, and Colonel Parker would have him record, and he wouldn't even put it out. He would save it for later because I think personally, I think he knew Elvis was going to die, and that Lisa found out not that long ago. She got really pissed because he was making money on all of Elvis, still making money on all of Elvis's music. But there's so much music that he sang. Not only did he sing this variety of music, like most people haven't heard Mama Like the Roses or even know that he sang Miracle of the Rosary. I mean, but he sang them so well. And your channel is, it's like, I don't know how first of all, I don't know how you can play Elvis music and get away with it because I'm not allowed to.
We're not allowed to monetize it. I couldn't do it live. They would cut me off.
They will. I tried to do a very, very, very funny. I had an idea for years for 4th of July, using the American trilogy. I'll tell you some other. If I could figure out how to do it, I uploaded it. It was hysterical. You would absolutely just love it. I'm just dying to tell you. But they wouldn't even let me upload it. I'd not monetize at all. I'm like totally shadow banned. I politically, because I started this channel talking about politics, I must have pissed somebody off. And I'm totally shadow banned. And I used to have more subs, and I can't get near 1,000. They keep scraping them off, and they keep me in like the 960 range. It's cruel, and it's happened for so many years that you keep seeing the same thing over again. Other people have noticed.
Yeah, I see channels that have been around for just a few months already have more subs than I do.
Yeah,
I don't think they like me too much either. So
but I don't know the reason for that, because if you love Elvis, and anybody loves Elvis, and they listen to your show, your Elvis Night, the sound. I crappy. This is a Chromebook. This is a crappy, small, very old model Chromebook because it's the cheapest thing I can't afford, but it's the cheapest thing I can get. And the sound, nothing sounds good on this. The sound of your cry, the sound of your channel is so good.
Oh, you're too kind.
And I am really, really, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you tonight is like, ask me a question. You know, you gotta always kick me back into place. And don't feel bad about doing that if you need to do it. But I want to ask you and talk to you about your channel and just how good it is. And I'm just really impressed because they're just, out of all the YouTube videos, anything I hear, the sound just isn't there. The variety isn't there. And yours is always really good. And the pictures you have of Elvis. I mean, if you are an Elvis fan and you love Elvis, even if you don't, you just really love good music. I don't think most people know how good Elvis is. And if you listen to your channel and how good that sound comes through and your pick of videos, it's really a different experience speaking as an Elvis, but just anybody who loves music. I am very, very impressed by your channel, and it's a sin that people don't know about it.
I look at it this way: if one person enjoys it, then I've done my job, and it's certainly fun. And we'll have to get together and do this again. I had a good time, and I really want to thank you. And we'll be able to address further things next time. But again, I want to thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Oh, it's anytime. Like I said, tonight I was like, it's going to be a short, and I've got all of that. And oh yeah, ask me a question. You know what? Because people don't ask me questions, and it is really and to talk about Elvis and asking me about what got you into Elvis, and just to me, it's like Elvis is like opening up a box of miracles. And it's like I get to tell all these stories that are, to me, between the dog and my parents, and just they're all miraculous stories, and how he have somehow came in and affected my life, and how he affects other lives. And so it's a question that obviously I don't get to answer, but I appreciate very much you asking it.
And you can stop by anytime you wish on my channel if you want to ever appear on a video. Just hit me up, okay?
I'd like to ask you questions all about your channel, about you and your love for Elvis. I want to do the same thing.
Okay, well, we'll meet again, as the old song says. So we'll meet again. Don't know when, don't know where, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. And until then, God bless you, my friend.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye. Okay. So who's ever out there, hey, let's listen to some Elvis music. In fact, this is a guy on the street, and he is he's got a really good Elvis voice. Doesn't look anything like Elvis, but let's put him into, let me see. Here we go. There we go. And let me start the Elvis show for you. It's going to look like nothing at the moment. This guy is actually a local icon. And let me shut my mic. Okay, I don't know why this isn't doing anything. Let me shut my mic. There we go. Shut my mic. Hello there. I don't know what happened. The thing just like I lost a connection. So I think let me try that one more time. Share screen and see if I can. There we go. We'll try this one more time. All right.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'd love some water, thank you. Oh, vodka? Oh, thank you. Vodka better. Oh, I like vodka. Oh, it's good to be here on Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. Santa hats, Santa Claus, Christmas. It's good to be here on Christmas. I don't know, I'm on so many drugs, I don't know what's going on. But I'd like to sing now a song for you from Blue Hawaii. It's a rockin' little number. Fingertips, I feel I'm headed now. toss and sway. Gotta say, she really knows the grass around. Maybe rock, maybe rock, baby gotta.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me, but apparently I'm having trouble. Oh, geez. Now that's playing again. Let me, okay. I couldn't shut my, it wouldn't let me shut my mic off. For some reason, my Wi-Fi must be really, really, really bad. So I guess no Elvis music tonight. The connection must be really bad tonight. But I hope you've enjoyed the show so far. And I wanted to destroy some of these lies about Elvis. And one of the predominant lies that's going around right now, and that there's going to be a new movie by Sofia Coppola that supposedly has the okay from Priscilla. But, recently Priscilla is no longer, she sued her own granddaughter because Lisa Marie took Priscilla out of the business because they've been feuding for years and something just isn't right. And so she sued and she got money, and now she's supposed to get money every year because she wants to be a part of the business. Then all of a sudden she's doing this movie, basically a reprise of a book that she wrote called Elvis and Me a number of years ago. I don't know, it's over 20 years ago. And except it sounds like what's been going around is that it's going to say the truth, unlike the movie. And it's almost like her retribution against Elvis. And everybody has this idea that Elvis did not have a relationship with Priscilla when she was 14 years old. He met her in Germany when he was stationed there when he was 14 years. She was 14 years old. He was 21. And she was with her parents. And he was there for 2 years. And so when he left Germany, she was 15. He went back to Graceland. He did not live with her. She went back home and she went to school and dated boys. She didn't live with him until 3 years later. That would make her 18. Technically, that would make her 18. And he didn't have sex with her until she was 21, when he married her. And that was something that was she specified that in her book. And that is a big deal because, and it's true, you hear these stories that he used to date these younger women and things like that. And what happened was his mother didn't trust girls at a certain age. By a certain age, all girls have experience. She wanted him to meet a girl when she was still innocent. And what she would do is she would invite just a few girls that she'd say, come up to the house. She would cook food. They would watch television. They would eat food and talk. And she was there the whole time, standing there. and because she wanted him to like basically pick out one of these girls and marry her at 21. And why 21? Well, Gladys got married when she was 21. And at that time in Mississippi and another place in the country, the legal age of marriage was 12 to 14. Oh, 12 to 14. Yeah, some places it was 12 to 15. Something like that. So you could get married at the age of 12 in this country. In 1957, Mississippi changed its laws. Jerry Lee Lewis married his cousin. She was 13 in 1957. But the law had just changed or was about to change from 12 to 15. But that was the point, is that she didn't trust. She knew that Elvis was very innocent. He was very innocent and he was very different. And if you know anything that I've told you about Elvis being very spiritual, that was the whole point, was to find a girl that was a nice girl, a girl that was going to stay nice until she got married. And with Priscilla, she wanted to have sex with him. She said that explicitly many times. And he said, no, I want to keep you nice until we get married. Then, and with other women, with the different women that he either was in a movie with a co-star or he dated, he basically was, if she was a nice girl, she's a nice girl. And she's going to stay a nice girl. And he respected that. And so that whole thing is a lie. And also, it's, as Sofia Coppola is saying, and there was men too. And a very interesting thing, and I don't want to get too into it, but if you're interested in finding it, it's not hard to find. You can just get it right on YouTube here. Apparently, if you Google Quincy Jones, Will Smith, Jamie Foxx, Elvis, Oprah, you might not really find Elvis. Quincy Jones for years keeps saying that Elvis stole music from Black people. The Black composers taught him how to sing and how to move. Total lie. That's just totally not true. And which isn't true. And one Black composer said, I forget his name. Actually, I don't know why. I'm very tired. I forget his name. I forget the song that he's famous for. But he said that he had never met Elvis. In fact, there was I'll leave a link to the show. It's called an Elvis News Report. This guy, I think from Sweden, does this Elvis News Report once a month. And he has clips of Quincy Jones saying these horrible things about Elvis being a racist and about how Elvis took this music, and the composer sitting there saying, oh, I never met Elvis. How he not only took the music, but he took the moves and he taught him how to. The whole thing is a lie. Well, what I also discovered was Quincy Jones has an interesting reputation. You know, you've heard of Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, and that he has a reputation with the woman whose initial begins with a big O, and starlets, right? I'll say no more. Quincy, because it's like some channels can say things and some can't. Quincy, I'm trying to figure, what is this going on? Why is the hatred he has for Elvis, insisting that he's a racist when you find who Elvis's friends were and who loved him? And it's all the Black performers that loved him, that were his friends, from Muhammad Ali to Sammy Davis Jr. to James Brown to Mahalia Jackson to Rufus Thomas. It's Al Green. I mean, and just regular people, just regular people speaking very well of Elvis who are all Black, and the Sweet Inspirations and their stories about how Elvis counteracted racism when he found it. It's total lie. So why does Quincy Jones keep spreading this lie about Elvis being a racist? And I think I figured it out. And I heard several years ago that Elvis, there was this guy that he had a relationship with too, was one guy. And it was a YouTube channel hosted by a guy named, I think it was called Today, I found out, Simon Whistler. And he hosts several different channels. And when I've tried to correct him on some things, look at, just go to this evidence, you'll find it. You're not quite correct about this, but here it is. They keep removing comment. They don't want the proof. And I'm talking about an Elvis trying to do about the Shroud of Turin, that the carbon dating thing was thrown out. And you'll find that these are the reasons. And this is where you can find the evidence on what was wrong with that carbon dating thing. And they kept removing it. And I kept putting back. And I go, this is weird. Why they just remove it immediately? And then I wrote, why do you keep, I didn't write what the comment was. I just said, why do you keep removing my comment? Why every time I put it? And then they left that to show we don't remove comments. Well, so there are a lot of channels that lie their A's off. And there are channels like mine who go out and read PDFs and scholarly papers and really try to do the research to find out what the truth is. And after that, I researched and I found that Peter Gorelnik, who was his official biographer, wrote Last Train to Memphis and Careless Love. Apparently, because Priscilla would say things like, oh, he was with I don't know how many things are true that she said, but I know some things that she said, like, look, Priscilla, I can actually see in photographs that what you're saying is not true. I think she might be very confused. And I know she's a Scientologist, and maybe, Zeno is still coming. They worked the planet Zeno or something like that. She said that Elvis wanted her hair to look like his and did want her to be natural. Well, then you see a picture of her. Okay, her hair's in bouffant and she's got the black eye makeup on. And then you see her with her regular red hair and it's straight, it's down. She's looking natural. The makeup is very natural. And with the difference between the two pictures is one is in the 60s when the style was, if a woman wasn't a hippie, that's what the style was. And in the 70s, things got more natural. You think of Liv Newton-John, when she's, bionic woman, like people in the 70s who looked very natural, with natural hair. And seemed to be fine with him. Well, the question was, Peter Gorelnik started hearing that Elvis wasn't having, he wanted to be around women, and he wanted the Memphis Mafia, to make sure they're very pretty and they're very clean, and that her toes were clean. But he didn't have sex with them. What he did was, they said, it's so strange. It's so odd. If it's so crazy, it's sometimes the crazier it is, the more likely it is to be true. He wanted their toes to be clean because the thing that he did was suck toes, because he didn't there's two things. One was that he was very religious, or I forgot what the second thing was. As you can tell, I'm pretty tired. I've been working hard all day on this show. And I was going to have all these clips, and I had all these clips lined up. So the show was going to be jam-packed, and it always turns out to be different. It's never really spiritual. Elvis was either he was a germaphobe. This was either he was a germaphobe or he was a really, really, really religious. And Elvis followed the Bible to a T. And he didn't even write off his charitable gifts. I mean, people write them off on their tax returns and you get money back, and then he could have taken it and spent it. But he felt like that was against the Bible because it said, don't let know the left hand what the right hand is doing. You just give for the sake of giving. You don't give for people to know that you're giving. And the amount that he gave, and it's just the selflessness of sick people to dying people, especially dying children. He took off pieces of jewelry and just gave, I have to give you something, just something to make you happy for the last moments of your life. And it just, the stories are so moving that Peter Rolnick said that, of course they could, and Priscilla said that, well, you know, he used to, I think he was a germaphobe. He used to bring his own knives and forks when he went to somebody's house to eat. So I think it was, it almost sounds like she doesn't even know Elvis in some strange reason. You know, it sounds strange, but like the question basically she was confronted with, why did you leave? Well, she'd been saying, oh, there's always another woman. But then she was confronted with, why wasn't he having sex with all these women? And then it was, he's a germaphobe. So he wasn't really cheating. He had a woman, which he didn't like. Obviously, there was a woman. For some reason, he always had to have a woman around. It made him feel comfortable. He met Priscilla precisely, very important point. He met Priscilla right when his mother died. She was dying, and it wasn't alcoholism. It had to do with her liver, but it wasn't alcohol. It was a genetically related disease. Elvis had the same thing. She had just died, and she wanted him to find a woman, find them when they're young, before they get older, because they'll get experienced, and because you want her to be a good finder, make sure she's a good girl that's going to stay a good girl till the time when you marry her. This was a very important point. She had to stay a virgin till you get married. So his mother had just died, and if anybody understands the impact of Gladys on Elvis, just how close they were. The father went to prison when he was 3 for changing the amount of a check by a few dollars. And they lost the shack, the 2-room shack they lived in. There was a kitchen and bedroom, living room, the whole thing, a shotgun shack, which means if you put a shotgun in the front door, it'll go right out the back and shoot. The bullet will go right out the back. He built that himself, but he couldn't afford to pay back $180. He got a loan for the wood, and so they lost that. And so Elvis was alone with his mother a lot. And then after Elvis died, the woman that Vernon remarried lied and said that Elvis had a relationship with his mother, which it turned out to be. A lot of people lied and wrote a lot of books filled with lies. In fact, one book written by 2 members of the Memphis Mafia because they knew that Elvis was going to die and they were going to lose their jobs. Elvis hired these guys. He knew them from, when he went to high school in Memphis. They were poor, so they gave them jobs. They saw that Elvis was going to die. So they wrote a book that came out on August 14th. The release date was August 14th. And it was a book of lies about Elvis because they wanted a book about gossip so they could make as much money as possible. Put just like the woman that married Vernon put out the lies about Elvis and his mother. Totally not true. Very religious woman, very good people, very generous people. And so they put out these horrible books of gossip that were lies. And had it come out on the, if they did it while Elvis was alive. If you think that they weren't trying to hurt him, they did it when Elvis was alive. And they did it on August 14th. That's the anniversary of Elvis's mother's death. You couldn't have put a nail in a coffin deep enough. So that it tells you that they were trying to hurt him. It was gossip. It was to make money. It was terribly, terribly cruel. So a lot of these lies went out there. And so most people would have accepted if Elvis cheated on Priscilla, slept with a lot of women. They would have accepted all that stuff. Elvis not having sex is weird, especially for a sex symbol. So they concluded that it had to be that Elvis was extremely religious. And if you listen to him, there's a video that I was going to show a clip on called Elvis, A Generous Heart. I suggest you watch it. Or The Kindnesses of Elvis Presley. It is, and you listen to him speak. I mean, the man would go and perform at a disabled, for a disabled home, disabled African-American children in Memphis, segregated Memphis. He would go and perform with Rufus Thomas, who was an African-American, for disabled African-American children. Every day when he was in Memphis, when he wasn't on tour, every night, I should say. And I only know this because I was in the audience when at a bookstore when Peter Gralnick's book Careless Love, the second book, came out. And a man in the audience said, I want to tell people, because my grandfather was a security guard at St. Jude's Children's Hospital, which Elvis bought a boat, a World War II vessel that he auctioned off to, or gave to St. Jude's Children's Hospital, where any child with cancer they auctioned it off and got money. He also Okay, we're back. Okay. He paid for that memorial, and for some reason, it got destroyed, and they don't want anybody to know that Elvis had anything to do with it. But he paid for that because nobody else was paying for it. And there should be a World War II, a Pearl Harbor memorial. So if you look at the man, listen to him talk, and you listen to these stories about how he really followed the Bible, and I think we're so jaded that we assume everybody's like us, or it's hard for us to believe that anybody could actually be just really good. No, they're sexy. They sing music and they jiggle, and there's no way anybody doesn't have sex or abstains in some way from sex for any reason. People don't do that. People find that really hard to believe. But if you're very, very, very religious, and he had a statue of of Jesus with the Sacred Heart, it's actually a Catholic statue, and he'd grown up a Baptist, but it's got the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and he had that right next to where he slept, his side of the bed. So when he went to bed and woke up in the morning or at night, he usually slept during the day and was awake at night because of the concerts. The first and last thing he saw was Jesus. So if he died during the night, first and last thing he saw was Jesus. He had seen Jesus. He thought of Jesus. Everything was Jesus. Everything was God. And I understand that. And I think there are people out there that are just like that. And he grew up in a very unusual household and was very close to his mother. And they went to revival meetings every night, which they would sing. They're spiritual meetings. It's kind of like singing gospel songs all night long, calling the Holy Spirit for hours every night. And they said when the parents didn't show up, Elvis showed up by himself. This is a very spiritual person in a very real sense, no matter what all this gossip says. In a very real sense, when you hear the stories of his childhood and they talk about the parents and Elvis was, it makes sense. The fact that he wouldn't write off of his taxes, who wouldn't write down that he had given this away, but they know it because Vernon kept records of all the checks that he wrote, but he never took it off on his taxes because he wasn't giving it to get anything back. He didn't want to tell the government, see how generous he didn't want to list that. That's so unusual. So with this Quincy Jones thing, and I'm looking for that because I typed in Elvis and men, whatever. Okay, so if this is out there, this should be out there. And now with this movie coming out, they're saying, and Elvis and men. And it's kind of like sometimes if a lie is spread out long enough, it's going to come back in some form and then look like it's real. Because it's everywhere. And there's like today I went to look up, tonight I saw these, what the heck is this? Priscilla says that Elvis did this and that. And then there was these crazy, these channels that have computerized voice. And I think a lot of people just watch this stuff. They don't realize it's a computerized voice. And I don't understand why people are listening on some of these stations, because I don't think these kinds of these channels are factual. So I looked it up, and I found some articles, except it said like fake USA Today. It didn't say fake. It just said USA Today News. And just repeating it, and then if you read it, and had some crazy advertisements on it too. I don't even want to explain what the picture looked like. But you could even see the wording. It's like, this comes from another country, and it's not even translated very well. So it seems like, and that was within a couple days that went on the web. These lies are just being manufactured, and I think a lot of it is the more clicks a channel gets, they get monetized, they get money. It's about just make up stuff, put it out there, get money. And then channels like mine try to do the research. And so I found nothing as far as that goes. And if you, like I said, if you Google Quincy Jones, Jamie Foxx, Will Smith, and then, the big O lady who has, we've been hearing interesting stories coming out about her. And that she was good friends with Harvey Weinstein. That there was something similar kind of going on, and Quincy Jones was I think what the story actually is, that he's very resentful of Elvis. And so, because you don't just keep putting out there that you're so sure that he is a racist, so and then you're telling stories that are actually not even true, that you can look up and find that they're not even true. And apparently he's a producer and he's got a lot of power, and he helps people in the music industry. He worked with Michael Jackson, get to stardom. Except in the 50s, Elvis would not have been he wasn't in that position to be like a producer to get him. But he was in the music industry, but he wasn't. It wasn't until the 60s did he start composing for other artists. But then I think it was more the 70s, the 80s, maybe closer to the 80s, that he actually started becoming a producer with a lot of power in the industry. I think Elvis might have said no. And in return, it must be because you are a. So if you look up those names, you'll get the story, because you'll hear Jamie Foxx and talking about this. I think you'll see Will Smith talking about this. And I didn't know this about Quincy Jones, that he, anything like this. I didn't even realize that he thought he was telling people that Elvis was a racist, which could be proven wrong. I mean, his stories were totally bogus. But I think he was spurned. And so and when you're as powerful as he is, you can feed that fire. You can feed the lies and keep them going. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Hollywood can make a movie about something that may not be true, but you can keep feeding something. Or let's say a big corporation owned the news and there were lies. They could keep feeding those lies. If the corporation wasn't legitimate, like we have legitimate news outlets that we can totally believe. But if it was the corporations, had a political agenda or wanted people to think this or that or the other thing, and then if you own a news platform, then you have a mouthpiece, right? So it could be that the lies about Elvis and the whole racism thing, if you watch it, there's a documentary. There's enough witness statements of people who are African American that basically you listen to this, you say, there's no way. The black people like him, and it's the white people that are the racists that absolutely hate him. The vitriol, I mean, you can taste the acridness of their words, how much they hated him. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll leave a bunch of links and I'll have them up by tomorrow, the bottom of this video, which I wanted to put on tonight, but my Wi-Fi could be coming in fantastic now for all I know. It looks like it's much better now, but it kind of teetered a little bit. But I was going to show you links, all these things. And you can look at it for yourself. You could say, well, you know what? If these people who are racists hate Elvis because they're saying that their teenagers or their children are liking music, the kind of music that he's singing, and they don't want them to like that kind of music. Because they use that word a lot in this particular documentary, at least the racists do. You can see where you would want, if you were racist, to get back at someone, because it started all the way back then, told literally a famous author of his, and I'll leave that link to that video too. Author of him researched this and said that it started in Texas, and the owner was a racist, and he owned like a newspaper publication, and he told the African Americans who worked for him that Elvis was racist. It was also another lie that started in Boston. Elvis hadn't even visited Boston, and they said that the only thing A can do for me is shine my shoes, which is a very racist thing to say. But Elvis, they said that he said that in Boston, but Elvis had never been to Boston. So these lies started a long, long time ago. And of course, they're just being fed more and more now. So like I said, with Mr. Jones, and I'm not talking about Tom, there could be that he was spurned. And so it was also a story I heard that, the young women, the 14-year-old girls, they interviewed them. Maury Povich interviewed them, and I saw the interview. I'm trying to find these interviews, and he had him on the show, and he thought he was going to hear all this terrible dirt on Elvis, and they just laughed. They said, no, he didn't. He didn't even kiss us. He was like it was our age. We're all teenagers. The mother was standing there. We're watching TV. The only thing you want to do is watch TV. In fact, there's a story. It just literally laughed in Maury Povich's face. They're all married mothers, very solid-looking housewives, really good, level-headed people, women. God, I forgot what I was going to say. It's another story this can connect to as far as all that goes. But it's a complete, all those are lies. And, if the whole point that your mother says, and the mother didn't get married till she was 21. She didn't have it. And she could have gotten married younger, because she could have gotten married in her state when she was 12. So if people could get married when they were 12, it would probably, and the law in Mississippi didn't change until 57. It probably was very normal for men to find women, because back then people died young, children, high infant mortality rate. A lot of women died in childbirth. So, and if you're really poor, usually it happened in very, very poor communities, it probably was a normal thing to find a girl who was younger because of those factors. But it was normal. It was normal for people to look for girls who were young. And then the guys are only like marrying age, like a couple years older. They could get married really young too. But his mother could have gotten married when she was 12 or 13 or 14, but didn't till she was 21. So she herself didn't believe that a girl should have sex until she's, first of all, we say that adult is 18, but there's also the age of consent, which in some states is 16, 17. But the mother, obviously when Priscilla was 20, that's still old enough. 18, he could marry her at 18, 19, 20, 21. Waited till she was 21. Why? Because he met a girl who he kept telling her, you remind me of his mother just died. And her innocence, and not just her innocence, but I'm sure she was innocent in many ways. And her beauty reminded him of his mother. And this is the kind of girl his mother said, find a girl at this age, marry her when she's 21. Make sure she doesn't have sex. Make sure she's a good girl. And she just died. And he said, okay, Mama. And this woman, this young, beautiful girl, walks into his life, and after his mother just died. And can you imagine? They say his mother had this intuition all the time, like she knew what was going to happen to Elvis when it was happening. They had a very, very close bond, that he probably thought at that moment that maybe his mother, these are her parents, respectable people. They were officers in the army. That this is the woman, that maybe his mother is in heaven and is sending this woman to him. And I think that's what he thought. And of course, he fell in love with Aunt Margaret, but he said he promised Priscilla's father that he'd marry her. And Aunt Margaret said Elvis always kept his word. He never broke his word. So anyway, I say good night to you. And like I said, if you leave a comment in the comment section, I will put your name into a hat, and I will notify you that if your name is pulled out of the hat, and you can send me your address at Twitter. Go to my channel page, and you'll see the banner. Lower right-hand corner, you'll see the X, which was Twitter, but now is x.com. And click on that, and you can direct message me. And if that doesn't work, I'll also put my email address in the description box. Is what I'll do. I'll have the links, and I'll have that email in there by tomorrow. And I'll try to have some chapters in there too, so you don't have to, you have to watch this whole thing. But anyway, I have a recording of my guitar teacher singing Long Black Limousine. And I was going to play a little clip of Elvis. You can see Elvis, and you could hear his voice. But I'm not quite sure if I can do stream and play those things at the same time. Weak signal. Okay. It says I can't do it. But anyway, thank you for joining me. And maybe the show that I was actually planning on doing tonight with all the clips, maybe I'll do that for January 8th for his birthday, which is the anniversary of my mother's birthday, is Elvis's birthday, and my father died on January 8th as well. So maybe I'll have an Elvis show that will be all those clips, and that will be, and you know what? I'll have another giveaway. How about that? So you get another chance if you want to take a chance, So anyway, it's so fun to win stuff. Okay, King Creoles. Elvis was never really spiritual. Elvis, sure. XM. Well, if XM says that, XM doesn't know Elvis. Unless they're joking. XM could be joking. See, Vincent Rose, Nave Vincenzo, this light, Cacciopo, 13th June 1880, Palermo, Italy, 20th May 1944, composer of Blueberry Hill, according to Wikipedia. That's interesting, because that's interesting because when I looked it up, it was somebody else. But I'm sure he's right. But sometimes Wikipedia things can be different. Because I thought it was Fats Domino. Maybe I'm Larry Stock and Al Lewis. Yes, I'm right. Okay. Larry Stock and Al Lewis are they're from so I'm sorry, Silas. Sorry. You can't trust Wikipedia. Wikipedia isn't right most of the time. They're Jewish and they're from Eastern Bloc countries. I forget the Eastern Bloc. Their parents came from Eastern Bloc countries. Or they directly. I think their parents came from, and the composers, the musicals, the Little Girl Blue, they came directly from Eastern Bloc countries. So yeah, I don't know. If you're thinking of Billy Rose wrote a lot of stuff for Fanny Bryce? I forget. He wrote some famous songs. I think he wrote My Man. But Billy Rose was Jewish, and he was also from Eastern Bloc countries. A lot of this music, doesn't matter where we're looking at. I mean, really, it's amazing. It's amazing that we would have our entertainment industry would be very different, wouldn't it? We have a lot to thank, don't we? So yeah, I'm sorry, Silas or Peace, that that was those guys. I looked that up a long time ago, and then if you look up and then you see Lewis, they changed the last name when he came to, like, if your name was Ashkenazi, if you're Ashkenazi Jewish and your last name, you came from Germany, your last name was Ross. Ross means horse in German, and they changed it to Rose when they got to America, and Rosenberg, they shortened it to Rose. They kind of, in Judaism, they call it mayonnaised. You know, because you Americanized it. It's mayonnaise. You mayonnaised your last name, and the Italians did that too. They shortened their names. They Americanized their names too. So anyway, if the signal wasn't weak, I would play you that song. I would have played you these clips. I have no idea how it was earlier night, possibly. But anyway, there's a lot of information about Elvis here tonight, and I do my best to research really well, because there's so many lies and so many people, and like, just lies get passed around until they're heard. They're in enough places, and then channels will say, well, that's real, and so they compile it and they put out a title saying, and it looks like it's clickbait basically, or like a shock video to get people to watch. But I think half the time, a lot of these channels and even articles they get on the web, they don't even know that they're not true. And I noticed this a long time ago on the web, that when you're researching, like, what's the truth? And sometimes you get a feeling like, I'm talking about any subject, you get a feeling, go, this isn't right. What's the truth? Let me keep searching. And sometimes you get a lot of different answers. And not everything on the web is true. And I was very happy to hear my sister, the PhD, what the PhD said. She said to her husband, look, not everything on the web is true. You got to keep searching. It's not all true. And I go, aha, I'm right. But I won't tell her that I was right about that. That I realized that too. That it's. And then sometimes you have to, if you're looking through a scholar, sometimes scholars have a certain bias. Like, let's say, as I'm doing a lot of videos about religion or the Bible research, because you've got scholars that are Christian and you've got scholars that are atheist. You've got some scholars with certain agendas, and even Christians can have an agenda and can kind of tweak it. So it's like, yes, this is true, but is it true? Or what is actually true? How do we know it's true? There are reasons why, and what makes something true, and why good scholars know it's true rather than scholars with a. I'm very sad to see that there are some scholars that do put out lots of books because they make a lot of money. If It's the same thing in the music industry, just to make a splash, shock value. And, it goes from the Bible, from Elvis to the Bible, to all different history of different countries and different people. We know Egypt has been up in the air and around again. And who's Cleopatra? She's a Macedonian Greek. I could have told you that ages ago. Everybody knows that. It's just something that and then people get scared, especially with Cleopatra, or we talk about the Egyptians. They get scared to say, wait a second, I see people with different colored skins, and it could be a multicultural society. I mean, it's either, it can't be all one or the other. You got to keep researching, and it just permeates everything. But when I try my hardest, I don't get any reach. It's like I said, I'm shadow banned, but I try my hardest. And even if one person listens to me, that's great, and appreciates my research, because I research the hell out of things, because I really want to find the truth. And even with Elvis, saying, you like Elvis, you've always loved Elvis, but I don't want to lie to myself and keep saying, oh, this is a great person. He's a great person. Oh, he's a good person. I know he's a good person. I do. How would I know? Even before I do my research, I face the fact this piece of gossip maybe isn't gossip. Maybe it is true. You have to face that, and you do your research to find the truth. But you have to be ready to face the truth. Even it doesn't matter how much you love whatever it is, whether it's history, Bible, or whatever it is. I don't want people to think that I'm trying to get you to hate anything or anybody. You have to be able to face the truth, but do the research. You know what I mean? It's like, don't just believe, do the research. And I try my hardest to do the research. And so what I put out here isn't, this is what I think. Oh, yeah, this is what I think. Oh, I heard this. Oh, I know. I've always heard that. So this is true. That isn't what you get when you come here. You get somebody who is, I've always loved to do research. And I come from, my parents didn't go to college, but my entire family are academics and intellectuals and professors and doctors. I've got a whole extended family that, even back in Italy, the guy who was like the Fauci of Italy, who the issue that we had a few years ago, he was the one that was in charge of it, and he's a cousin of mine, except he's related to my grandmother, so he's got a different surname. And you'd say, he's so dark skinned, there's no way you're related to him. My grandmother was very dark skinned, and you probably see no family resemblance. But so it's like I come from a world that is research and academia, and even though I did it on my own, I just went out and did it on my own, and I know how to do it, kind of thing. Like I said, if I'm wrong about something, I'm wrong about something, but I do put in a good faith effort to find out the truth, rather than sitting here like a bubblehead just telling you things, because I would hate myself. And I would hate myself for somebody who's had a situation when I was young, things older people doing to me. I'm not going to put Elvis on a pedestal if he did that. There was no way. There was no way. There was no way, because I know it's wrong. I don't just know it's wrong. It's every fiber in my being despises it. And I can also, having that experience, you can kind of pick up people, like I'm sure you can, who have that proclivity, especially to people who are even younger than people in their teens, they give off a vibe. And there's certain people that I'm sure we'd agree on. But I'm telling you, I don't get that vibe from him at all. And believe me, I'm very used to that vibe. You know, that vibe, even if it's a pervert at that I would meet today, that's just a pervert and looks at me and can tell there's something about you that's very young and naive. I can tell that I pick up on that vibe because they can pick up on that naivety about me. But that vibe, you never let that go. Once you recognize that, you can see that in people. But I still did the research nonetheless, just in case I'm wrong. Anyway, God bless you out there. Don't forget to leave your name in the comment section. There's your names in the chat there. Because there's no way, see in the chat, though thank you so much for putting your name, for writing stuff in the chat, for me to click and find you. That way I can't reply to these. So whose ever name I pick out of the chat. So if you want that book, or if you want Destined to Die Young by Sally Hodel, I was also going to give away, see this scarf, a brand new one. And if they have any more of these, this is a music pin with a butterfly. And of course, Elvis's music. And you know, the butterfly represents Jesus is actually represented by the butterfly because it's resurrection. That's one of his symbols, is a butterfly. People don't know that. But also is one of Elvis's favorite songs was I'll Fly Away. And of course, he did fly away and he transformed into something else. So you could say, if you want the pin, I'll give you the pin and the scarf, or if you want the book, or if you want, just let me know which one you want. Okay. Don't say like a solid gold crown or something I can't afford. But I did promise you something, and this is a great book. So anyway, I think I'll see you January 8th because there are so many things I wanted to write, and they actually had to do with this comeback special and this whole outfit I had put together. I put together for this whole thing, and I probably won't get to see the movie either. The movie, The Reinventing Elvis, which they say is fantastic. So please go out and see it. I guess it was released today and then tomorrow in Europe. And then I guess it's going to be on streaming, but I don't have any streaming service. And it depends on how much it costs. Don't tell me that broke again. The cord here for my Chromebook, it's frayed because it bends and goes this way. That's why it says low power charger. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm gonna have to buy another one of those. That's why it's like, please, let's like stop shadow banning me, please. Please, something monetize me so I can get better equipment and I can bring you a better production, because I wanted to play you that great performance, a little bit of that performance from the local Elvis impersonator, but I'll try to do that January 8th. Oh boy. Anyway, God bless you, everyone. Thank you for showing up. And like I said, leave a comment and so you can win something. Okay. God bless you. Good night. And 11:51, almost August 16th, the day that Elvis died. But anyway, I think he died at 3 something rather in the morning. Around 3. Usually I remember things exactly. And you know what? I'm so tired. I've been working so hard. See that? Bruises from pulling out trees. I've been like, I work really hard outside, especially like helping the neighbors with their yards and stuff. So it's like, anyway, so I'm getting a little tired. I'm getting a little forgetful. But anyway, God bless you. Who's ever here? God, thank you so much for showing up and spending this time with me. And I'll get back to doing my my prayer videos soon, because I hear that people really enjoyed them. Meditation talks, and of course, my continued series on what's true and what's not true about this stuff you hear about the Bible. is this real or is this fake? And it's all scholarly research. You know, there's no music and stuff on the screen. It's just scholarly putting it out there. Okay, God bless you and good night. And thank you, Elvis. And if I hear, you know, if you turn out to be facts are facts, right? No, God bless you and good night. Thank you so much for joining me.